Please be seated. The court is now back in session. And we would like once again to give the floor to Kiew Sampon's defense to continue putting questions to the witness. You may proceed. The Grafie, what happened to Nunchi's defense team? You may join in.
Mr. President, as we get ready, or as we were getting ready, I found note 38, which we spoke about earlier with Mr. Heder, and I gave him the wrong document. So with the help of the court officer, can we please provide to Mr. Heder document E3/748, which corresponds a priori to note 38 of his article?
Yes, you may do so.
Donc, même question que précédemment.
So, same question as previously. So, Mr. Heder, is this the right document?
Yes.
Je vous remercie.
Thank you. As you were preparing yourself, in the preparation of your testimony, the prosecutor listed a certain number of statements that you gathered from witnesses, whether in the context of the document that we looked at regarding the refugees at the Thai border, but also in other statements on the case file. And I'd like to go over some of them with you. And we're speaking again about the issue of the lower-ranking cadres and their responsibility, and the fact that the policy such as announced was not necessarily the policies that were implemented. And this is what I would like to go over with you.
Premier document.
So the first document I would like to go over with you is document D224.77, which is on the list of documents from the co-prosecutor's office. And with the leave of the President, I would like to display the Khmer version on the screen. In particular, the following pages at ERN. So this again is document D224.77.
No.
English ERN 00352107. French 00612235. Khmer 0065749. Mr. Heder, would you like to have the hard copy of this interview, which I have in English?
President, yes, you may do so. Court officer, could you deliver the document from the counsel for the witness examination?
Je précise que je...
So, I'd like to remind you that I'm trying as best to give you the documents in the original language. So please forgive me if there might be a few errors. So this is an interview dated 14 October 2005 by SOAS that took place in Bakong in Pursat province. And this is referenced on the first page of this document. So the paragraph I would like to look at is at ERN in English, and I repeat it, 00352107. In French, it's 3 pages before the end of the document. And in French, the quote in particular is at the end of the third paragraph. In 1977, we had 2 crops per year, having solved the water problem, and got 3 tons per hectare from the 2 crops. The stipulation was that people were to get a can per meal, but at times the reality was 1 can per person per day. The production was enough for people to eat, but too much was taken away. There was no specific amount that was taken away. The sector and the Northwest Zone took whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. The district stipulated the ration. This was conveyed orally. If you exceeded the ration stipulated by the district, the cadre would be arrested. On the other hand, the district never arrested people for feeding the people too little. That accusation came when the Southwest Zone and West Zone came. They said the Northwest Zone was not feeding the people. End of quote. So my first question is, do you remember this interview? And do these notes correspond to what was said in the interview that day?
Yes and yes. This is an example of a case in which I did the interview in Khmer, or the interview was done by me and others in Khmer, and I wrote a simultaneous interpretation into my notebook, and this is a typed transcript of what I wrote into my notebook.
So my question is, well, you spoke Khmer then, is that the case?
Yes, this conversation, this interview was conducted entirely in Khmer.
Donc, quand vous dites...
So when you speak about the translation, you're speaking about your own translation, which you took down in your notes.
Correct.
Et à la base, ce sont...
And these are handwritten notes that you're taking as the conversation is developing, or did you redraft these notes later? Did you rework the text for it to be clearer, or were these notes actually taken simultaneously?
The notes are taken simultaneously, and then afterwards I look at the notes and I write it up in TypeScript into a computer. And this, I think, is the computer version, my own computer version. It looks like the format. It looks familiar to me, so I think this is actually my TypeScript based on the handwritten notes, not a court retyping as we've seen in some other documents.
D'accord.
Fine. Well, my specific question was, are you retyping exactly all of your notes on the computer, or do you rearrange your notes differently so that the notes are clearer if they cover several topics that are similar? I just want to know whether or not this is a literal transcription or whether you somehow redrafted your notes afterwards.
My note-taking protocol often involves leaving out articles, the, and sometimes a preposition, which is implicit in what is being said. So there may be some addition of articles and prepositions in the final version. Normally, I would say I don't rearrange the text. There may be some occasions on which I do to improve the flow. But as you can see, these things are not presented as if they are verbatim. They're not in quotes, as it were. This is, again, as I said, originally describing this work, a kind of amateurish academic's attempt at what I later learned was supposed to be called an objective summary.
Oui, vous avez...
I think you brought this up when you spoke to the co-prosecutor and you learned how to do so later. And in this objective summary, by definition, you never include the questions that were asked to the person you were interviewing. Is that the case?
Normally, yes. No questions are included. Just a kind of summary of what they said.
Je vous remercie de...
Thank you for this clarification on your note-taking. Now I would like to turn to the content of the paragraph I just brought up with you. Does this account correspond to what you heard in other statements or in other interviews, whether it be in your research work or whether it be in your work for the ECCC, with the OCP, or for the OCIJ, concerning the Northwest and the West zones?
I think the answer to that has to be there are certainly quite a few other accounts that I have been given over the years that are generally in line with what is described here. But of course, at the same time, there are variant accounts. The situation wasn't uniform in every place at every time. But certainly, this is not a aberrant or unique or unusual account based on my recollection of the universe of interviews that I have done.
Je voudrais m'intéresser.
Now I would like to turn to a paragraph that's a bit further down. In French, it's the last paragraph on the page. And in English, it's at the same page. And in Khmer, it's on the following page. That is, say, 00657430 this time in Khmer. So this is what the person interviewed says. In April 1975, the instructions were that the 17s and the 18s should eat equally. Tempering did not mean starving them and working them harder than ourselves. So I will stop here. So my first question, what do you mean by 17s and 18s?
17 is a colloquial shortening of 17 April 1975. 18 is a colloquial shortening of 18 March 1970. So in broad terms, the 18s refers to those who came under party administration and therefore party general re-education and refashioning as of 18 March 1970, the date of the toppling of Sihanouk. And 17 April refers, obviously, 75 refers to the date on which other people came under that administration. And thus, broadly speaking, the so-called, what I translate as the veteran people versus the new people.
Ce passage que
This excerpt I just read out to you, I would like you to compare it to the other evidence and the other interviews you gathered and conducted, which is also referred to in the other footnotes and in the other quotes in your article. So the instruction were that the 17s and 18s should eat equally. So this person told you that instructions were given. Did this person tell you who gave these instructions?
I assume that if that had been specified, I would have included it in the notes. I therefore assume that it was given to me in a kind of passive voice or de facto passive voice, with those who were giving the instructions you described as gave, just means they, them, without specification.
D'accord.
Fine. And when you heard this, were you able to compare this with the instructions you had read about in the documents we mentioned earlier? Or you did not draw this parallel in your research and in other interviews that you might have conducted?
I think there have been now two questions. One asking me to situate these statements in the context of other statements, other interviews, and second, to situate it in the context of party documents. And this interview takes place after I wrote, I think, the piece that you looked at, reassessing. So it's not relevant to that. With regard to your question about where does it fit in the spectrum of other interviews that I have done, and if we narrow the focus to interviews with, generally speaking, lower level cadre, then I would say that this is a very common statement or claim, if you prefer, by such persons, and even a typical account as given by lower level cadre saying what policy was or claiming what policy was.
Thank you for this clarification. Now I would like to turn to another document. This is document D224.31. D224.31. And with the President's leave, can we please provide the original in English to Mr. Heder? And I would like to focus more particularly on Khmer page 00788-310. And may I please display this page on the screen, and with the court officer's assistance, may the witness please be provided the hard copy. And in French, the ERN is 00774010, English 00351-976.
Yes, you may do so. Court officer, could you deliver the document from the counsel for the witness examination?
Le paragraphe qui m'intéresse se trouve, en tout cas en français, c'est le 3e paragraphe avant la fin. Et peut-être pour préciser à la première page de tous les documents, c'est un entretien qui a lieu dans le village de Champukek, sous-district de Prektmei, district de Kiensvei, toujours dans la province de Kandal. Et c'est un entretien réalisé le 29 août 2005. Donc dans le 3e paragraphe avant la fin,
Counsel, please wait. There is no English translation or interpretation. Court officer, could you verify with the AV unit? Defense counsel, please repeat your last statement and question.
Yes, I was saying that the paragraph I'd like to focus on. Oh, first, I'm sorry, I was giving the context of this interview, which is referred to in the first page of this record. This interview was done in the sub-district of Prektmei, in the village of Chompukek, Kinspai district, Kandal province. And I would like now to turn to the paragraph I would like to look at with you. It's the 3rd paragraph before the end in the French version. And this is what is said by the person being questioned. Nguyen, the husband of my sister, who was older than 50, was arrested in Chotil district in Rosai Srok. He had worked as a base official for public works. He was accused by the villagers of being a smooch, and he was hated by the villagers, which, although this was not true. So my first question is, do you remember this interview?
That's not right.
j'ai entendu que vous avez fait un commentaire. Je ne sais pas si c'est par rapport au passage que je viens de vous lire, mais je n'ai pas eu de traduction.
I heard that you were making a comment, but I didn't hear it. It wasn't translated.
Sorry.
Vous n'avez pas de traduction non plus?
You did not hear the translation either?
I heard the French starting out, and then it just sort of went dead. Almost followed the French, but not quite.
I don't know if there is a problem with the English. Can you tell me if I can proceed, if you're getting the translation clearly? You can hear me? Fine. So did you hear the paragraph that I quoted to you? Yes. So I'm going to ask you the following question. This person is speaking about a head of unit, and in the interviews that you conducted in different places where you interviewed people, do you have other examples of people who were arrested because of personal problems they might have had with local authorities?
Yes, I would say that was very common. Commonly reported in my interviews, to be precise.
Now, I would like to turn to another document. Document E3/1714. The famous interviews with refugees at the Thai border. The document is rather long. And my question is, will the Khmer version on the screen be enough for you? Or do you want to have at least a hard copy of the pages I'm going to refer to, knowing that I'm going to read rather short excerpts? So my question is, Mr. Heder, can I continue just referring to the excerpts? This is document E3/1714, and I would like to look at the account number 22, which is at French ERN 00648997, Khmer 00324740, English 00170733. I need a bit of clarification, Mr. President, but I don't remember if I'm allowed to mention the names of the people who were interviewed in these refugee accounts, because I don't remember what the ruling was in relation to this, because we have the name of the person and that person's position, but I don't know if I have the leave to project this on the screen.
President, we already have given instructions to the party. If a witness already bears a pseudonym, then the pseudonym shall be used during the questioning and answer session before this chamber.
En fait, il y a
Well, this is not a potential witness. Well, I will avoid, to be sure, displaying the document on the screen. And I'm simply going to ask to project the segment I would like to look at, and it's at ERN 00324741. English 00170733. And these are the two last paragraphs of this account number 22, dated 9 March 1980, and this interview took place in Sakeo. And the two paragraphs read as follows. At the same time, there was too much subjectivism. The upper levels did not investigate the concrete situation, but simply sat in their offices reading reports and believing them. Meanwhile, at the lower level, maybe I'm going too fast. I'll start again. The upper levels did not investigate the concrete situation, but simply sat in their offices reading reports and believing them. Meanwhile, at the lower level, the cadres were buying to please the center and hiding the facts from it. The result was that there was a great and increasing distance between the upper levels and the people. In the northwest, Vietnamese agents, like Rosnim, were taking rice away from the co-ops at the expense of the people in keeping it for themselves. They put it in storehouses in the towns and also hid it away to use it in the future struggle against the center. They kept the rice away from both the center and the people, thus betraying both people and the center. I'd like to specify here that you indicate that the source was a cadre from the party, and I will not say his name, connected to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So my question, following reading this excerpt, is to know if you heard in other interviews that you might have conducted for your research or for your work here at the court, did you hear similar accounts stating that the upper levels did not get necessarily all of the information from the lower levels? That's my first question.
Yes, quite commonly reported, stated by people whom I've interviewed, including both cadre and, in some instances, ordinary people.
Et ma deuxième question.
This is my second question regarding this cadre. He says that Hunim in the northwest deprived people of rice. Under the same circumstances, that is the circumstances of your field investigations, and also when you were working at the ECCC, did you receive any other similar statements to the effect that some local cadre took advantage of their positions to snatch away rice or to abuse the powers that they had?
Again, yes, that quite commonly asserted, reported, stated among lower-level cadre themselves and among ordinary people. With regard to this specific passage, I would add that it was less common for people to say that this was because those who were doing the hoarding, if you will, were Vietnamese agents. It was more commonly stated to be as a result of these local cadre hiding, storing, hoarding food and other things for their own use.
Toujours dans
Still in the same document, E3/1714, I would like to deal with another testimony, and the French ERN is as follows: 00648-994. In English, it is 00170730. And in Khmer, it is 00324735. And it is on the next page. with your leave, Mr. President, I would like to place this on the screen. Since the name of the person interviewed is not mentioned, in order to complete the reference, it is interview number 20 of the 20th of March, 1980, in Sakeo. And the source indicated, as you say, is the captain of a boat who was working during the rainy season. In French, we are dealing with the last two paragraphs, and it reads as follows: free interpretation. Since the liberation, the system was that in each planting season, each region had held a congress to decide how much rice to be grown in common. Following the transplanting and the harvest, another regional congress was organized to decide what quantity of rice had to be kept for the people and how much had to be sent to the center. Generally, the party center did not fix quotas for regions, but each region was responsible for doing the maximum. The regions were supposed to keep sufficient rice for the regions and for the regional troops. The surplus was given to the organization for sale abroad. But since there were traders in the various regions who wanted, since they were caught in the various regions who wanted to have a good reputation, they sent a lot of rice to the center, which caused a shortage in the regions. And they sent the rice to the center in order to climb up the hierarchy instead of providing enough rice for the people in the regions. The main problem was that at all levels, there wasn't sufficient analysis of the real situation. Everyone believed in the reports of one another, and the CAT drafted false reports, keeping the rice for themselves and not feeding the people. End of quote. Here again, as I asked previously, may I request you to state whether you heard such statements as part of your field work or as part of your work at the tribunal for the co-investigating judges or for the co-prosecutors. Did you hear such statements only in those zones in question, or you heard them elsewhere?
Firstly, I'm not seeing anything on the screen. It would be helpful if I could see the material on my screen. From what I heard said, I would say that there are some other reports, interviews that are generally consistent with this picture, or at least some parts of this picture. Not as many as there are, I would say, with regard to lower down in the system. Just fewer people to interview who had access to what was going on at the regional, and I should specify that in this context it means what I later conventionally translated as zone level. What's peculiar or unique or unusual about this particular account, to my recollection, is that the assertion, the statement, the claim that the center did not specify quotas for delivery of paddy or rice is very unusual, maybe unique, maybe the only one, and it's not consistent with the other material, including in party documents and including in other interviews with which I am familiar. So with that caveat, the caveat that I have less information about events at that level, and with the caveat that I don't think I can recall any other accounts or any other internal party material that suggests there was no setting of quotas from above, from the center that is. Yes, this is something that I have certainly heard in some other, not that many, but some other accounts.
D'accord, alors, je ne sais pas.
Very well. I do not know why, but normally what I read out should be placed on the screen and in Khmer. If that is not the case, there must be a technical problem. In any case, I can see the text on the screen of my learned colleague. I hope that this problem will be solved subsequently.
The President, court officer is now instructed to look at this.
Alors, normalement,
Normally, in case of need or difficulties, I could provide the passages that I have quoted, documents in English to Mr. Heder. Perhaps that would be of some assistance to him. But I do not have much left to deal with on this document. Is the problem solved in Khmer?
version anglaise, c'est pas l'intégration.
But I'll still give you the English version of the document. It's not the entire document, but only the passages I intend to use, because the entire document is quite voluminous. Still regarding the same document, E3/1714, I am particularly interested in interview number 13 of the 6th of March 1980 in Sakeo. The ERN in English, to help you follow Mr. Eder, is 00170714. In Khmer, it is 00324706, and in French, it is 00648-979. The passage of interest to me is in the first paragraph in the French, the middle of the first paragraph. I will provide the ERN. Apparently, it was not understood. In English, it is 00170714. In Khmer, 00324706. And in French, 00648979.
Donc, au milieu du premier paragraphe en français.
So this is what we read in the middle of the first paragraph in French. It is true that during the Pol Pot period, a lot of people were killed for no reason, but this was not done personally like Pol Pot. It was done by district and sector secretary. For example, the son of a friend of mine was a combatant. The son was accused of being a traitor. Then in the middle of the night, the district secretary came to arrest the mother and father, and they disappeared. Then later, the district and sector secretaries were themselves accused of being traitors, arrested, executed, and replaced. The replacements had been in power only a few months when the Vietnamese came. First question. Does this account dealing with arrests of officials of districts and sectors something you found in other accounts? And regarding the replacements of certain district secretaries and persons accused of maltreating the people, did you hear of any arrests, executions, and replacements of persons following such local denouncements?
Yes, and quite widespread in both cases with regard to both questions.
Toujours dans le même document,
Still in the same document, and this time, in principle, it is testimony number 18, dated the 8th of March. The ERN in English, to enable you to follow, is 00170728. The ERN in Khmer is 00324732. And the ERN in French is 00648993. In French, it is the second paragraph, which is of interest to me. Let me point out that the ERN 00648997 in French and the ERN in English is 00170723, and in Khmer the ERN is 00324722. And I would like to point out that the source is a person from Tombotres Takeo in the southwest, probably a member of the party. This is just to provide a context for this statement. So, regarding the ERNs I cited earlier, this is the part I wish to read out. Second paragraph in French, second sentence. In the northwest, the situation was very strange. The system of cooperatives had not been put in place before 1975, 1976, and people seemed to be very much afraid of the card and would sometimes shake in terror when the card came, as if these cards were feudal lords. And I made them understand then that the revolutionary society no longer had any feudal inequalities. The term feudal stems from the fact that some local cards behaved like feudal lords. Is this something you heard in other accounts? Was this the way the situation was at local level? Did you have any similar documents or receive any interview reports referring to such functioning at local level and this categorization of people as feudal lords? In your experience as an investigator and as a researcher, be it for the Office of Co-Investigating Judges or the Office of the Co-Prosecutors, did you hear any such thing?
Yes, with regard to the part about people living in fear of cadre. No, I would say with regard to the specific analysis, if you will, by this source of, or interpretation of that, the behavior that led to those fears being feudal. I think that's a fairly unusual account.
Je voudrais maintenant
I would like us to look at another document now, and it is document E3/198. And it is the notes, or rather the objective summary, to use the technical term you adopted regarding the interview of the 17th of August 2005 you had with Mr. Kyo Sampan. The ERNs are as follows. In French, it is 00296-212, and in English, it is 00184-680, and in Khmer, it is 000-78214. The original is in Khmer, and I will simply place on the screen the part I wish to comment on, or I would like you to comment on. This would echo what has just been said. in the last paragraph, you are talking of Mr. Kyo Sampan, and this is what you say. According to him, in the Khmer Rouge regime, each zone, particularly the zone secretaries, were like viceroys, and they managed work in the zone as they wished. The Central Committee could not control and could only receive reports. In the new North Zone, after the assignment of Kang Chap to be in charge, people were arrested and imprisoned, and the upper echelon was not aware of this until 1978, when the Central Committee and B1 sent people from Phnom Penh to arrange for tourist reception. Then they were aware of it and reported the matter. End of quote. In principle, these are your notes, but I am just putting the question to you. Do you recall these notes and the interview? Does that tally with what you recall as having been said by Mr. Kyo Sampan at the time?
Actually, in this particular instance, neither the interview nor the notes nor the translation are mine. So I can't answer your question in the way that I normally would.
Alors, je vais poser...
Very well. I'll put my question differently. Who conducted the interview, and what is the difference compared to other note-taking methods and the manner in which you translated what you heard in respect of the other interviews you referred to a while ago?
This interview discussion was carried out by a Cambodian by the name of Heng Ham Keng. I believe in the company of a Cambodian named Doik Vanaret. The notes were taken in Khmer, more or less, I think, along the model that I described with regard to my own note-taking. And what we have here on the screen, the English we have here on the screen, appears to me from the way in which things are formulated to be a court translation, not my translation. There are certain terms here I would normally not use, so I take this to be a court translation.
Donc, est-ce que je dois comprendre?
So should I take it then that you did not attend that interview of the 17th of August 2005?
Yes, that's correct.
D'accord. Donc
Very well then. I will not put any further questions on you, to you on the matter. I would like to look at another document now. And it is document 17.71. And to avoid revealing the name of the person interviewed, may I request the President to show Mr. Heder both the interview in English and the interview in Khmer, the transcripts of both interviews, knowing that the original normally would be in English. With your leave, Mr. President, may the witness be shown the document. The ERN for the first page in French is 00614079. In English, it is 000897556, and in Khmer, it is 006023556. And it has to do with a witness who has a pseudonym, TCW 325. With the President's leave, of course.
The President, you may proceed.
Dans ce document, à la première
In the first page, or on the first page of this document, we see the name of the person interviewed. First question. Did you personally conduct this interview with the person? Dated 22nd of September 2005. And it is in English. The interview is in English and the notes are in English. Does that ring a bell?
Yes and no. Yes, I did the interview. Yes, I took the notes by the usual method that I've described in English. This appears to be my transcription of the handwritten notes into a TypeScript computer digital form. The no bit has to do with the date. The date at the top is not the date of the interview, but a date that is generated by the computer database into which the data was inserted. The actual date of this interview, if I recall correctly, is sometime in 1980. The place of the interview, I can also recall, easier to recall the place than the exact date. The place was Khao Dang, a UNHCR administered asylum seekers camp on the Thai side of the Thai-Cambodian border. So I interviewed this person in that location in that year, took the notes in English and then transcribed them, put them into a database, and when it was spewed out by the database, it has that other date on it, which is just the date that it was spewed out, or maybe the date it was entered. So that's a false date.
Je vous remercie de ces précisions.
Thank you for these clarifications. I would like us to look at an initial extract from this interview. The ERN in French is 00614 086. In Khmer, it is 00602 366, and in English, it is 00089764. May I request that the part of the interview record that I would like to use be placed systematically on the screen in French. It is the third paragraph on the page, and it reads as follows. At 17 April celebrations, Pol Pot was always the speaker. Khieu Samphan was not even on the stage. The only time there were a lot of people on the stage was in 1975, when there was still the front. After that, it would be Pol Pot, Nuon Chea, Tamok, etc. Pol Pot spoke at the 1976 and 1978 celebrations, which I attended. He also spoke, I think, at the 1977 celebration, although I did not attend it that year. He continued to be the party secretary throughout. End of quote. First question. And I believe this will be the last question before the lunch break. As part of your investigations, be it within the framework of your research or as part of your work for the Office of Co-Investigating Judges and the Office of Co-Prosecutors, did you receive any other statements regarding the 17th April celebrations and the fact that the speeches were delivered by Pol Pot and Khieu Samphan was not present on stage? Do you recall receiving other documents or interview reports regarding the same events or similar events?
I think the answer to that one has to be either none or maybe too few to remember. I can't say that I have a lot of data, a lot of interview material on this specific point.
D'accord. Monsieur le Président.
Well, Mr. President, perhaps this is the right time for us to take our break.
The President, thank you, Madam Counsel. The time is now appropriate for lunch adjournment. The Chamber shall adjourn now and resume at 1:30 this afternoon. Court officer, please assist the witness during the break and have him return to this courtroom by 1:30 this afternoon. Security guards are instructed to bring Mr. Kyew Sampon to a holding cell downstairs and have him returned in this courtroom this afternoon before 1:30. The court is now adjourned.